Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review a film either current or classic, and maybe plug a few things that are on our radar in the film world that we think you should check out. I say film world. Sometimes it's TV, sometimes it's video games. Usually there's some kind of cinema throughput in some one way or another, but either way, hopefully we got some good stuff for you this week. We're going to be reviewing Glass, the newest film in the Unbreakable franchise. Is that what we're calling it? I don't know. But of course, this is the new film from director M. Night Shyamalan, starring Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, James McAvoy. If you saw Split last year, 2 years ago, whenever that was, Glass is a follow-up film to that. So if you haven't seen it yet, not to worry. We'll talk about it spoiler-free before we jump into those amazing conversations that only spoilers can allow. But before we get to any of that, I've got to introduce you to my co-hosts for the evening. As usual, Jim Pugliafico is here, part of my heart, part of my soul. I love you, Jim. How are you, babe?
I'm great. Thanks, babe. And I'm just glad to be here. We're just kind of settling into the groove of the new year. Reviewing movies. We're coming up on Oscar time, so there's going to be lots of time to talk about Oscars. Nominations came out today, and all the conversations were started all over Facebook and Twitter and whatnot. But yeah, I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to talking about this movie. We're finally capping off this trilogy, I guess. And I don't know if it's called the Unbreakable trilogy or M. Night Shyamalan trilogy or what, but it'll be interesting to get into the conversation with our guests tonight.
Indeed. And definitely want to introduce our guest. But before we do that, some sad news for our listeners. Unfortunately, Will Lindis, who we deeply love and adore, he's not going to be with us tonight, unfortunately. He is currently traveling for work. Sorry if I set you up thinking he's never coming back. He will be back with us on the next show. But while Will is traveling, and we wish him well in hotel internet hell, unfortunately, this is not stable enough to join us for the show this week. But I'm definitely looking forward to having him back after his trip to Orlando. But it wouldn't be as fun with just Jim and I. I mean, Jim, I love you. I love talking movies with you.
I know, right?
Part of the magic is having that special third come in to spice things up.
Hey.
And speaking of guys who spice things up on the Movie Bears podcast, we've got our very own Magic Mike Lovins with us this week.
Everybody.
Mike, hey, how the heck are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for letting me be your Will this week.
We are so happy to have you with us. Mike, of course, joins us from his own podcast. Mike, for any of our listeners who are not familiar with your show, which is, by the way, also amazing, tell our listeners, you're welcome. Tell our listeners a little bit about your show, what you guys do, where they should find you.
Yeah, so my show is the Real Game Movie Show, and so our show is it's a little different, whereas it's mostly audio only. We're talking about trying to get into some video, but it's an audio only podcast right now. And, it's just two of us. So my co-host, Ryan, he's a little younger than I am too. So we kind of get some of that cultural and age difference kind of opinions going back and forth on certain movies and stuff like that. But it's just an in-person discussion. We're getting ready to tomorrow our first episode of season 2 hits on all of the podcast platforms. So Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify, and also at on our website, which is really just the hosting platform, but working on getting something official there too. But yeah, we mostly talk about current movies and similar to you guys, obviously, you know, the times that I've gotten to come on with you guys really inspired me to branch out and do my own thing. And so far, so good. Did I lose you?
Hey, Jim, I think you're on mute, babe.
I am on mute.
I was like, oh shit.
We'll fix it in post.
I do that a lot. You know that thing where you have to sneeze, so you mute your microphone and then you forget to unmute it? That happens. Anyway, Mike, I was just congratulating you guys, you and Ryan, on crossing the one year anniversary, right? Season 2. Season 2. I assume you mean like by season you mean like a year.
Yeah, pretty much. This upcoming episode is episode 49, close enough to a year after we did our year in review, and then we did our most anticipated. We thought that's a good place to call it a season finale. So we're calling this the official start of season 2.
Excellent. So we'll be looking forward to what you guys have in store, either whether it's more of the same goodness or some new stuff.
We're switching it up a little bit, not
good.
Not too much, just a little bit.
Well, awesome. Well, it's every time we have you on the show, Mike, it's always a treat, and it's so great being able to tune in to your show as well. It's one of those things where like I don't feel like there's a finite amount of podcast love out there. There's several that we listen to on the regular, and your show, Mike, definitely is a great one. So listeners, if you're looking for another great movie themed podcast, definitely check out the Real Gay Movie Show. And
it is REEL, just so people, it's not too hard to figure that out, but
yeah, for sure. It's good clarification. It's a clever play on movie related words. So welcome, Mike. And I want to welcome some folks. We've got a few folks hanging out with us in the live chat. Bobby Miller says, hey guys. Hey, Bobby, glad to have you with us.
Hey,
welcome. For those of you who are hanging out, but you haven't said hi in the chat yet, feel free to do so. Hang out with us as we're talking about Glass and sharing some plugs a little later in the show. Would love to maybe hear your thoughts if you've seen the film. If you haven't seen it yet, maybe you could tell us a little bit about why you haven't. Do you not want to see it? Were you not a fan of the earlier films? That can definitely provide some interesting talking points that we'll get to. But Sam from Denver says howdy. And our good friend Tom from here in Tucson says, I wish it was always that easy to put Jim on mute. So, wow. Wow, Tom.
I didn't say it.
Oh, goodness. Well, guys, are we ready to jump into our discussion of Glass? Of course, we'll start spoiler-free, give some initial thoughts, and then for folks who want to step away because they value their innocence, we'll, of course, give warning before we get spoilers going. But are we good to go? Are we ready to do it?
Yeah, let's break into this thing.
Oh, goodness, the Glass puns have begun already. I'm pretty sure they're going to be a pain. In my side.
My pun game is like probably the lowest of the three people on this episode tonight.
I mean, it's good. It's good, babe, for you to reflect on that a little bit, but I'm sure that you'll be just fine, even if your puns are a little transparent.
Right.
Anyway, all right, that's enough.
It's how the way your brain works.
All right, here we go. Our discussion of M. Night Shyamalan's Glass. All right, so Mike, you saved us from having to do a sound drop for that sound effect. That was amazing. Thank you.
I do what I can.
Oh, goodness. So, Jim, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? For anyone who's not familiar, and this is spoiler-free, of course, what is kind of the the setup of Glass. What is this all about? And give us your initial thoughts. Is this worth checking out in theaters? Maybe waiting for a rental, or even skipping entirely is a valid option. What do you think?
Okay, so I'll back up and say that this is the third film in what we think is a trilogy. Third film trilogy. Nice. This is the third film in what I believe is going to be a trilogy, although who knows, I guess, depending on how successful this is and where.
Well, isn't this already a trilogy, though, right? Because we had Unbreakable.
It's a trilogy now, but we don't know if it's going to end up to be a trilogy.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's what I'm saying, right. So this is the third film. It's basically 19 years after the first film. Is that right? Unbreakable came out in the year 2000, believe it or not. So almost 20 years since Unbreakable, and 2 years since we saw Split. I'll read the IMDb summary of this this third movie, and we'll kind of talk about its relationship to the other movies without spoiling too much about the other movies as well. So here we go. Security guard David Dunn uses his supernatural abilities to track Kevin Wendell Crumb, a disturbed man who has 24 personalities. So this is in reference to the main character from Unbreakable, that being David Dunn, played by Bruce Willis, and also to the main character in Split, who is Kevin Wendell Crumb, played by James McAvoy. Both are in this movie, as well as Samuel L. Jackson, who plays I guess you could say, kind of the titular, if not the main, then the titular character of this movie. So what you have is these three guys who are joined by let's just say supernatural bonds or special bonds, and for certain purposes, which I'm not going to give away in this part of the discussion, but yeah, so like I said, it's been a long time, and 2 years ago when Split came out, it caused kind of a sensation, because since Unbreakable had come out, M. Night Shyamalan had a few movies, and I don't have IMDb up, so there were some movies that came out in between that some of them did pretty well, some of them weren't so well, and I think people had a lot of people had written M. Night off, as a filmmaker, to be able to surprise us or keep us thrilled. But Split came out to overwhelmingly positive reviews. I think we really liked it on the show when we reviewed it. And so we were really excited for when we heard that Glass was going to be a reality. And I don't know, for me, if Glass lived up to my expectation for the franchise. That's not to say I thought that Glass was a bad movie, because it's not. I just don't think it. I just don't think it had the same surprises that a movie like Split had for me. Kind of the wow factor. I thought it was pretty by the numbers. There was a lot of origin story stuff going on in the movie, and for the third movie to cover, not just one origin story, let's say that, seemed a little redundant to me, and a little it seemed like sort of a waste of time for me. The movie, for me, hit its stride kind of toward the end, probably in the third act, and I ended up sort of liking this movie. I would say it's a movie that I don't know if you have to rush out and see in the movie theaters. I mean, cinematically, I don't think this movie adds a lot to what we already had, either in this franchise or in movies today. Cinematically, storytelling wise, I think it was pretty standard by the numbers, and nothing super unexpected in this movie. So I'm kind of on the fence. I say this is you could probably wait for a video on demand release for this movie if you really want to catch up with it. Not necessarily having to run and catch it in theaters. So that's I'm very lukewarm on the movie. I'm looking forward to talking about some of the reasons why as you guys get into it and as we get into spoilers.
So what you're saying, Jim, is you're a little split on this movie.
I'm pretty much split, unfortunately. Yeah.
Man, I thought your excitement after the last movie was unbreakable.
It was it was apparently it was not as unbreakable as I thought. It might have been a little fragile, I guess.
I had a sixth sense you might feel that way.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
I know.
Is this really happening?
And no, that's
awesome.
That's what I said during parts of this movie. Like, is this really happening?
All right, guys. Thanks for letting me visit. But
all right. So it sounds like not the most exciting film for you, babe. Mike, how about you? Where did you come down on Glass?
all right, so I'll start with just saying that. So I just recently rewatched Unbreakable, probably for the first time since seeing it back when it came out. And I hadn't seen Split, so I watched those back to back. So after then kind of, starting off rewatching this, getting reacquainted to this new franchise, I was pretty excited to see this movie. And let's say I'm glad that I saw it. I don't hate my life for seeing it or anything like that. To be perfectly honest with you, I actually feel like I came out of it a little higher than I think I've been hearing in some of the other reviews that have come out on this movie. There's been quite a bit of negativity, but I do think that a fair enough amount of people, though, did enjoy it. So for me, I would say if you like M. Night Shyamalan, or if you liked those first two movies, it's worth seeing and, wrapping up the trilogy. And I do think it's going to end at a trilogy. I think I'd even heard that that M. Night was calling this the end of this saga. So if all of that is true, I do think it's worth seeing. And to be honest with you, if I saw it in IMAX, I actually enjoyed the theatrical experience of it. So with those catalysts, I'd say see it in the theater. If you're kind of lukewarm on those other two movies and you just kind of want to see how it ends, then I'd say, yeah, wait for Redbox or Netflix or whatever. But if you really did love those first two, go out and see it now. I think it's also important this is, as far as I'm concerned, it's an M. Night movie, for better or for worse. And if you like that kind of filmmaking, go see it in the theater to support the filmmaking process. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Mike, you had, sorry to Brad if I jumped in there, but you had
go for it.
You had mentioned that there was some negative, and I don't let things like Rotten Tomatoes or cinema scores or whatever influence my opinion of movies.
A lot of people do, though.
No, they do, but I find that it's often interesting to see the reactions both on the critic side and the audience side. And on this one, the difference is quite large. Critics really didn't like this movie. But by and large, audiences liked it at almost 80%. So it's interesting sometimes to see the difference, like which one's higher and if there's a big difference.
There you go. I mean, based on what people are coming out of the theater then saying, there's your signs. Go see it.
Oh boy.
I think I'm done with that. I think I've run out.
Electric Guard in the chat says, why the puns? Because puns are fun.
Yeah, guys, why the puns? Why put me at a disadvantage?
Because it's our fucking show and we can do what we want. That's why. They're fun. And, M. Night
I'm a dad, just comes natural.
It's part of your dad
indoctrination
charm package, right? Like it's, So, all right. So it sounds like, Mike, you were maybe warmer on this film than Jim was. And definitely interesting to call out the disparity between like critics and fans. As a movie critic on a podcast,
yeah.
I have to say, I don't fucking listen to critics before I go see a movie. I go out of my way not to read reviews, not to read impressions, because I want to formulate it on my own. I don't want to be influenced. So it seems a little meta when I'm like, hey, guys, let's give advice. Should people see this? Don't listen to advice. See it yourself. But that said, I liked this movie overall. I would say maybe I'm in between. This is awesome. I'm in between you, Jim, and Mike, which is always a great place to be. Just with regards to my feelings on Glass, I'll say that when we saw Split a couple years ago, spoilers for Split if you haven't seen it, but it's the setup for this movie, so okay. Like the stinger final moments of the film, we see Bruce Willis as David Dunn watching TV, and it's like, oh my God, this is connected to Unbreakable. This is amazing. I can't wait to see what happens next. And then we get this movie, and it's a lot of talking.
There was a lot of talking.
Yeah.
A lot of talking. And then we get some action going, and, for better or worse.
What a $20 million budget will get you.
Exactly. For better or worse, right? Like, I think the movie kind of saves those more action-y moments for kind of where they make sense. The first part of the movie is really building up to that. JP Wendell in the chat, you captured my thoughts exactly. I loved it until I didn't. And that's exactly my feeling. The first probably 2/3 of this movie, I dug the hell out of, even though it was a lot of talking. I mentioned earlier that James McAvoy, Bruce Willis, Samuel Jackson are in this film. One name I did not mention, because I wanted to give her some spotlight action here, was Sarah Paulsen. For me, I feel like she was kind of a big shining spot in this film. I've loved her in American Horror Story. I've only seen a couple seasons of that show, but I've seen her in some other things as well. And I don't know, there's just something about her eyes. She has some of the most expressive eyes I've ever seen, and she does this like cool, weird lilting thing with her voice that goes up and down. And I don't know, it kind of mesmerizes me a little bit. And given her role in the film as a psychiatrist or psychologist or psychiatrist, whatever, that's trying to like help these guys, supposedly, right, with their delusions of superhero grandeur. I found it really interesting, and I can't wait till our spoiler section where we can kind of talk about some of the things that were happening in those conversations. But she was probably one of my favorite parts of this movie. So big, huge kudos call out to Sarah Paulsen. Anya Taylor-Joy was here as well. We loved her in The Witch. Loved her in Split. Unfortunately,
not much to do here.
Not a lot for her to do here. Yeah, I just there's a little bit, and she did that fine. I don't think it's her fault. I think the movie just doesn't give her a lot to work with, which is, I don't know. I'm on the fence about, like, I want to see David Dunn. I want to see Mr. Glass. I want to see the Horde. But like, I also really care about, the other characters as well. So anyway, I liked this. I thought it was fairly fine. I don't think I got out of it what I was hoping to get out of it, but I'm not a filmmaker. That wasn't my movie to make and, give a message with. So I was entertained. I'll say that. And I'll also say I hope this is the last movie in this series of films. Because I'll be honest, we'll talk about it in spoilers where things get left, but I don't really feel like I need or want to see more. But that's me.
Yeah, and this is arguable, but like this seems like M. Night Shyamalan's spin on the comic book movie, right? And that's in a comic book franchise, if you will. And that's what he wanted to do here, and that's what he did. But I gotta say, like, I do like a lot of M. Night Shyamalan's movies. I liked movies like The Village, and of course, The Sixth Sense, and I did like the Split movie here, but like I don't know if I want to see him make more comic book world movies. We have enough of those fucking movies already. Like, I can't wait to see. I want to see what M. Night Shyamalan does next with his talents, and his screenwriting and directing talents. Maybe bring it back away from the comic book stuff because it's already done to death. A lot of the tropes were in this movie, especially this last movie from comic books, and I rolled my eyes at a lot of them. It just seems like, I don't know. It seems like he's trying to make these movies comic book superhero movies, and I think they're just done. And it is a slightly different twist, but those kind of movies have been done not only to death, but have been done better. Certainly in the Marvel universe. And who knows? DC may be getting their act together with some of the more recent ones, but
well, Jim,
I didn't need it in this one.
Speaking of twist, and I'm not going to say anything about the twist yet. We're not in spoilers.
Oh boy, we got a lot to say about the twist.
I feel like M. Night has kind of backed himself into a corner with how people expect his movies to go. And I don't feel like this movie had enough of an M. Night twist.
I'll agree with you. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. Because I had some issues with the twist or the reveal, I guess we could say. That's later in the movie.
Well, why don't we do this? I think we're at a point now, 20 minutes in, where people who are going to see this movie have probably already made up their minds to see it or not at this point. So those folks, if you don't want to be spoiled, now's a good time for you to step away, maybe come back in 23 minutes and 42 seconds for some plugs at the end of the show if you're listening live, or if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all those good mediums. Feel free to skip ahead using the time index in the show notes. But guys, let's go ahead and open things up to spoilers. I'm still rambling a little to give people a chance to step away if needed. All right, we're good. Do we want to start with the twist? I mean, is that like the place to go for an M. Night movie?
Yeah, Mike, you brought it up. So why don't you kind of continue with your idea about what you thought about the twist, and if this wasn't quote unquote twisty enough, or didn't give you enough whiplash, whatever.
So if the twist was supposed to be the see here, that's the problem. I can't tell if the twist was supposed to be the Hydra-like organization, if the twist was supposed to be that it's an origin story, not a finale, or whatever. I feel like when you get to the end of an M. Night Shyamalan movie, whether you like the movie or not, it kind of hits you like, oh my God, that was the twist. And I don't feel like it was defined enough in this movie. Because
it was a little Inception-y. Like it was like a twist within a twist, right? Like
right, exactly. Well, like if the organization was supposed to be the twist, well, they kind of hinted that that Elijah knew about it, because that's why then he was getting everything set up to record everything, because he figured that out. Which I think the thing that about this movie, even over Unbreakable and Split, was that I think they really tried too hard to make this fit within comic books, stereotypical comic book tropes, but wanted it to still feel like this artsy, independent kind of movie. And here I'm saying that I'm coming out higher than I think a lot of people are, but then also I feel like there are things about that didn't work.
Well, I think part of the issue, Mike, and I think it's fair to say that, like, there are a lot of great things about this film, and I reading some reviews after I saw the movie, I think a lot of critics are sort of unfairly bashing it for what it's not. I think it's hard to make a superhero movie in this day and age when, superhero movies as of today are getting Oscar nominations, right? Like,
right.
That's a big deal. It's a different format. So part of the issue, though, is that, like, if you're going to make a superhero movie in this day and age, obviously there's certain expectations. Also, too, like, superhero movies aren't a new thing anymore. People know about comics and superhero movies and origin stories and how things are set up. One of my big issues with this whole, like, twist within a twist thing at the end is Mr. Glass is, like, laying there dying, and he's like telling his mom about like how comic book stories actually work. And it's like, dude, we've been getting superhero movies now for the last 20 years or whatever from Marvel. Like, we know what they are. We know how they work. Like, does M. Night Shyamalan feel like he's educating us? Is this supposed to be like a clever thing? It just comes across as very like patronizing in a way. And I don't know. That didn't sit well with me.
So, like, let me ask you this. I'm sorry.
No, like, go ahead, Mike. I was just gonna add on what Brad said.
Something that that Ryan and I kind of actually disagreed on and kind of got into it a little bit on the show. But I suggested if Split had come out in 2003 and then this movie had come out in 2006 before big rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all that stuff, do you think this movie would have worked better on the level of it being an M. Night movie and not a comic book movie?
I'm going to say yes and no. Yes, because it's early enough that we didn't have the rise of the Marvel thing, but no, because I don't think audiences were ready for that at that point.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, back then, superhero shit was still nerdy and, like, not cool in a lot of ways. So
that's fair.
I don't know.
That's an aspect hard thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it, like I said, I don't think it works well I don't think it works exceedingly well on either level. So, if this had been like an introduction to, superhero, I don't know. It's just not my wheelhouse. Like, and we've gotten so many of them that I'm just, I don't know, a little bit worn down by it. The whole, I mean, are we in spoilers yet? Not yet?
Yes. We are. Yeah.
Okay. We've basically, there were 3 like vignette scenes in this movie where we got like an origin backstory for each of the main characters as they were like, kids or whatever. And during every one, I rolled my eyes. Like, as soon as they showed the first one, I'm like, okay, now I know I'm going to get 2 more of these because, and here we are in the middle of the 3rd movie already. And you have to show me like, you didn't have to show me those. Like, I think, as a matter of fact, they might have showed some of the other stuff. I think they might have covered that ground a little bit in Split and Unbreakable, or at least to the degree where I didn't need to be shown that, somebody had an abusive mother or, somebody almost drowned in a pool as a kid, or, I felt like I didn't need to see that. And every time it happened, it took me out of the movie and destroyed the momentum that it had.
Well, I think this movie had 2 jobs, right? Like, obviously it's a sequel to Glass, or a follow-up to Glass, but also because it's tied into Unbreakable, Split, thank you. Because it's also tied into Unbreakable. Jim, you mentioned it earlier, it's been 19 years since people saw that movie. Some folks went back and rewatched it again, but I think a lot of people probably didn't. And so this movie kind of like has to set all this stuff up again. It can't do like a last time on M. Night Shyamalan's blah, blah, blah.
Right. It's got to work as a sequel, as an end of a trilogy, but it's also got to work as a standalone movie.
Right.
Oh, man. I don't know. I don't know. It felt...
I'm not giving it a pass. I'm just saying I think that's where a lot of that is coming from.
Maybe that's why they put it in there. Like, we have to recover this ground again. And maybe that's why in almost every Superman movie we get the origin story too. That or the Batman. I'm sorry, the Batman movie, right? We get that origin story. It's just gets
but that's
tiresome.
every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
right.
It just gets tiresome after a while.
But if we look at this from the other side, I mentioned earlier the Sarah Paulsen stuff was a big hit with me, and one of the reasons why is this whole aspect of like, you know, they take the throughput of the superhero thing, right? Like David Dunn is invincible and super strong. Mr. Glass is super smart. You know, the Horde is the Horde. And Sarah Paulson's character spends all this time through conversation, like deconstructing each of them, right? And for me, I found it really fascinating. And I think the movie kind of pushed out on that a little bit to some degree. This whole idea that like, maybe mentally there's something going on with each of those people that makes them think they have these abilities when they really don't, or maybe it is some kind of biological thing, but it's not a superpower. Like it can be explained away by science. And I really dug that. And then when it turns out that nope, they really do have superpowers and there's this Hydra-like organization out to stop them, that to me is where it got a whole lot less interesting and dumb. I think if the movie had even taken that a step further, and like, for instance, Jim, you and I were talking about this the other day, but Mike, I'm curious about your opinion.
Yeah.
What if we see the battle at the end of like Bruce Willis fighting James McAvoy's The Horde, and like from their perspective, they're throwing each other against the van, they're tossing cars, they're doing all the superhero stuff, and then we cut to like Anya Taylor-Joy's perspective, and it just looks like two normal people fighting, and it like cuts back and forth between the perspectives. Like, would that have been like a cool mental dichotomy?
Like they're only superheroes in their mind,
in their head, versus really being superheroes. Like, would that have worked for
I
you,
almost kind of thought that that's where it was going to go when they were showing the video footage, that he wasn't really bending that bar on the crate and stuff like that. That's kind of where I thought they were going with that. And like the first conversation that she had with them, where she's kind of getting into Bruce Willis's head, then, you know, starting to make him doubt that stuff. For a moment, I was actually kind of on board with her, but then I started thinking about other people had seen, like his son saw him lifting those weights in Unbreakable. The girl that was captured, and you guys know her name, but I forget her name, but she saw the beast crawl on the wall.
Taylor-Joy, yeah.
So there were witnesses then to these feats that these guys were doing. So that kind of broke that down for me then.
Yeah.
But to Sarah Paulson's point, and I agree with JP Wendell, this is kind of fascinating, and I love that we're talking about this. Like, David Dunn's son was a kid, viewing that through the lens of a kid, like, oh my God, I just saw my dad lift all these weights. He's Superman. Anya Taylor-Joy is this teen girl in distress, being held prisoner. Things are super hyped up and scary because of the situation. You know, could that
arguments, of course,
influence their perception? You know, I think if the movie's twist had been to leave us not sure if they had powers or not, like an ambiguous question, it would have worked better for me. I don't know. I think it just kind of like pushed out and went too mainstreamy and lost a lot of the power that the first 2/3 of the film had.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead. I cut you off the last time.
The Hydra organization and the reveal of that.
The Clovers or whatever.
Lucky Clovers. What the fuck is their name?
I have a theory that this universe is tied into the Cloverfield universe, but just
oh my God,
dude, that's the Cloverfield organization. Yeah.
Huh.
No, I just made that up.
It's already 2 studios coming together for this movie. There's no way in hell a third's coming in.
I just made that up.
We did see a field in front of the sanitarium.
Yeah. Well, I that was another moment where it jumped the shark for me, because in other twist movies, you can kind of see where the twist kind of once you learn about the twist, where it tied into the movie in spots. But in this one, you really didn't. It seemed to come out of nowhere. Like, oh, so all these people have clovers on their tattoos. there's from some kind of Hydra organization. Like, I guess when we have people with superpowers, we've got to have some kind of Hydra organization. This is the way I guess M. Night Shyamalan feels. Like, why did we have to have that? I don't even know why we had to have that whole thing. That whole construct didn't really pay off for me at the end.
And here's where it kind of didn't work for me. And part of this, I heard somebody else saying, I'm like, yeah. So starting off with my thoughts, when I watched Split and then I saw that end scene, it's like, that's cool. And I knew Glass was coming out, so I already knew that there was some kind of twist. But it felt to me that M. Night got done with Split and was like, oh, I could tie this together with Unbreakable. Let's get Bruce in here because he'll do anything these days. And then, so in a way, Glass kind of felt like it was forcefully trying to merge those two movies into then a third movie. But so, shit, where was I going? The organization.
Yes.
So supposedly they've been doing this for forever.
Mm-hmm.
Once David was the only survivor on that train, why did it take them 19 years then to come get him? Do you know what I'm saying there? Like if they're monitoring this superhuman stuff all the time, and I know it's because in the real world that hadn't been created yet, but I kind of feel like there should have been something said to make us know then why they hadn't gone after David Dunn back then.
Well, I guess maybe they thought that.
Am I overthinking it?
Maybe they thought that like his powers were somehow in check. Like he wasn't going crazy causing. I don't think he was causing the issues that like the Beast was, right? I mean,
right
out there, kidnapping and killing innocent girls and stuff like that. So maybe that activity, the activity in Split kind of kicked them into gear.
And that's exactly it. That's one of the things that the Sarah Paulsen character said is, when they've got David's head like an inch above the water, holding him down.
Oh, that's
she's
another,
like,
yeah,
I know. She's like, whenever there's like two of you, like a good guy and a bad guy, like things escalate to the point that like we have to step in and stop you. So like before the Horde, came around and started kidnapping girls and causing all these problems, David Dunn and his son were like a dad and son superhero team, I guess. And it sounds like only recently has David Dunn started going for these walks to try and find the Horde and stop things, right? So it seems like as the Horde comes out and escalates things, David Dunn comes out and, the movie takes us on this weird sort of misdirect of there's this Osaka tower that's been constructed and we're going to have this giant showdown and an explosion and millions of people could die. And, then we end up just getting like three dudes like duking it out in a
but that's the twist, Brad. That's the twist. The twist is it was never going to happen in the first place.
Right. And
I actually didn't mind that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, me either. I'm just saying. I think that's kind of where that's coming from, Jim. To your
right.
Yeah. All right.
Criticism.
Someone's going to have to answer me this question, and I know Brad, you already attempted to answer it for me. But how did they drown David Dunn in a puddle when he had just been almost drowned before and was able to use his strength to get out of a fucking water tank by busting out the side? What happened between him coming out of the water tank and him having one cop hold his face down in a 1-inch puddle?
Lazy writing.
Yeah, exactly. Like
I'm going to disagree. I'm sorry.
I couldn't put it together in my head. Like
I'm
don't
totally going to disagree. I know I took a stab at this offline, Jim, but here's my thought. So when he first got into the tank of water, he's fighting the Horde. He's still got breath in his lungs. He's holding his breath. He's hitting the wall. Boom, they fall out. But then he lays there as the water's like rushing over him, maybe sucking in water, like he's weak, he's hurt. It's just like Superman. Like when he's first exposed to kryptonite, he still has some of his strength. He's slowly getting weaker to the point that like he has to lay there and recover. It's almost like after you finish, right? Like you need to lay there for a little while.
He needed a refractory period.
That's a great theory.
He was in his refractory period, Jim. He didn't have a lot of strength at that moment. But here's the other thing, and this is part of what I liked about the Sarah Paulsen thing. I still think that there's a mental component to it. I don't think it's that David Dunn has any real weakness to water beyond like everybody else's weakness to water. It can drown you. I think it's a mental thing, spurred out of trauma from when he was a kid, and he's mentally convinced himself that like water is his weakness or whatever. And so like, I don't know. I think about me. Like I used to think that I couldn't do math, that I was stupid with math. And I let myself believe that I was a dummy and I could never, ever do math. And I would just give up when math was involved. And then later on I had to do math and I figured out, hey, I'm actually pretty good at math. Okay. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Like if David Dunn could like get over his fear of water, maybe that person wouldn't have been able to hold him down like that. But because he convinced himself, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's my theory.
Well, you could look at it like this too. In the tank, he saw it cracking. He saw a way out. When his face was buried down in the puddle and someone was holding down and he was already weak, he didn't see that way out.
Okay, I'll accept both of your explanations, but I will say this. I will say the movie, we've talked about this before. Movies set up rules, and then it's best if they follow those rules, right? The rule is that when he's his back is against the wall and he's in a stressful situation, that's when his superpower turns on, right? And for some reason, for some unexplained reason or reason that we have to reach to try to explain, like you guys just tried to do, that it didn't happen in this instance. And that's the end of that character, really. Like, I don't know. It just felt super, super lazy to me.
I honestly thought he was going to make
There's a wizard in the puddle. What would you say, Mike?
Even after the drowning in the puddle, I still thought that there was a chance he was going to come to and make it out of this movie alive. Yeah. I didn't think Kevin or Glass would. From the beginning of the movie, I knew that those two characters, the villains, were going to have to die by the end of the movie.
Well, who knows? If we do get a fourth movie, it's going to pick up 2 minutes later, and they're all going to be rushed to a hospital. Oh, wait, they're already at a hospital. How about that? And they'll be just fine. Hey, we've got a special guest in the live chat room. Peter Lovins, whose name mysteriously looks familiar. Says, hi, Bears.
Right.
Who is that guy? Does anybody know him?
I think I've done him once or twice.
I've seen pictures online. He's pretty cute.
He is cute.
Hey, Peter.
It's funny. I can't see the chat, so I don't know what he said.
He just said, "Hi, Bears."
Oh.
Oh, goodness. This is whoa. All right. Well, I feel like, I don't know. Have we reached a logical conclusion to our Glass discussion?
Can I just throw one more thing in here real quick? Because
sure.
I just want to counterpoint. I did not like Sarah Paulsen's character.
Oh, really?
Okay. Fair enough.
And
do you have a problem with women, Mike? Is that what's going on?
That's what Ryan keeps telling me. Every time I object to a female character, it's because I don't like women.
Yeah, you gotta be. Yeah. Oh boy.
No, it's.
Don't get me started.
I can appreciate what you may have liked about her, but to me, I thought the character was actually kind of boring.
You know, Mike, I mean, if you want to be a misogynist, that's completely up to you. I mean, that's fine.
It's too
kidding.
bad they
all women are boring.
It's too bad Shyamalan killed off the other counselor character. Remember the counselor from Split?
Yeah.
She was cool.
Uh-huh.
Who was that actress? She was really good. And that's not fair, right? I think the way they wrote the character was very kind of dry, to a point. But let me see. Betty Buckley.
I'm not blaming Sarah Paulsen.
Yeah. I didn't like the character, right?
Yeah.
And I was very lukewarm on her. And like I said, and Anya Taylor-Joy, who I normally love, was practically non-existent in the movie. So,
but at least she got that patented Anya Taylor-Joy face in every scene she had.
Well, she has that look. That's just her. Yeah. No, that she doesn't do that.
The whole like sidekick trio thing was a little weird, I thought.
Like when they all three magically showed up at the same time as the battle was about to happen.
And then at the end of the movie, they're all sitting together at the train station.
That was the other thing. Okay. So like, the videos were taken from all those cameras, and Mr. Glass, Elijah, like sent them out to his mom so they could be disseminated. We're supposed to have this whole like, the world just found out superheroes are real thing. The scene is supposed to show like thousands of people like suddenly seeing these videos, believing it's true. Oh, a fire has been lit. We saw like 4 people look at their phones for 2 seconds and then keep walking.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Was that a lack of budget, or was that like the actual point that like people see these things and they didn't care anyway? I don't know, but yeah.
We'll have to ask the Shamalama Ding Dong.
All right. Well, let's move on to some plugs as we look to wrap things up here. So, Mike, definitely tell us again how our listeners can find your show. And if you have a movie or something you want to plug as well, feel free.
Yeah. So, Real Gay Movie Show, REEL. And so it's realgaymovieshow.com will get you to the episodes, or iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and our Instagram is at Real Gay Movie Show. Twitter is just at Real Gay. So, follow us on there too for information. And I tell you, I don't really have a movie to plug because I've been so focused on Glass and stuff. But I tell you what. Next week, we're talking about On the Basis of Sex, but I've already seen that. I highly recommend that movie to anybody. That movie was so good. Have you guys seen that yet?
Not yet. I haven't.
Nope.
Please check that out.
Okay.
So wait, you're recommending a movie about a woman, Mike? Am I hearing that right?
Well, Armie Hammer's in it.
Oh, okay. I got it.
Okay.
Now we understand why you would recommend that movie, Mike.
Oh, boy.
All right. On the Basis of Sex. Excellent. Jim, what about you? What's your plug
Mike, before I get into my plug, I have to say that like we had a fun little exchange on Twitter. I listened to their, I think it was their top 10 episode from the end of their first season, and Ryan was calling us out as the Movie Bears podcast. The one show I decided to listen to all the way through. Ryan gives us a mention, but he mentions us in the form of calling us out because we didn't like a movie that he loved. So
what movie was this?
The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
But it wasn't really true because I really liked the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I think Will liked it to some degree. It was you, Brad, who got us in trouble with Ryan.
Let me clarify. Jim and Will were like stroking it to that movie. They loved it so much.
No, us and Ryan were stroking it to that movie.
Yeah, all 3 of you were having a fucking Buster Scruggs circle jerk, and I was having none of it. So
busting a scrug.
I will take that. I will own it. Ryan, you can bring the heat. It's all good. I didn't like 6/8 of the movie. I'll put it that way. Or how many vignettes were there?
Seen it, so
yeah, it's a bunch of vignettes. I liked 2 of them. So, Whatever. I'll take it. I'm a big boy. I'll put my big boy pants on.
Nah, it's all in good fun. I love listening to those guys. One other quick thing. Tom in the chat asks, as a new viewer, can you tell me if you ever review Netflix movies? And the answer is yes. I mean, we just talked about The Legend of Buster Scruggs, which is on Netflix exclusively. And we did review that one. We haven't, other than that one, I don't think we've done one that we featured one, but in plugs, we always talk about Netflix movies. I think I mentioned one last week when we talked about Dumplin'. I think I talked about Dumplin'.
I loved that movie.
Yeah, that is a really good movie. But what I came here to plug was a movie I saw in the theaters this week, and it's not open everywhere yet for some reason. It's got a really strange release. It's called Bathtubs Over Broadway. And it's a documentary about this guy named Steve Young. He's a comedy writer on the now defunct David Letterman show. He was one of the lead writers. And if you remember that show, there used to be a segment on the show where Dave would bring up would have a little thing where he'd bring up these books, and they might have funny titles, or really inappropriate titles or whatever. And they also used to do the same thing for records, record albums. And this guy, Steve Young, used to go out and scour record shops for some of the funny albums that they would find. And one of the things he found was he uncovered this hidden world of industrial musicals these were musicals that full-on musicals that were written and produced and put on for annual sales meetings for big corporations, like Ford and Chevy and Xerox and plumbing companies, when they get all the salespeople together, and they would put on these big shows, and some of them were recorded albums because they were musicals. Some of them you can find videos of them. But anyway, he goes on this journey he starts collecting all these things, and he becomes this guru of collecting all these old industrial musicals. It's a fascinating documentary, very entertaining as well. Some of the music that was written for some of these shows was written by people who wrote Fiddler on the Roof and stuff like that. And this is what these people did to pay the bills in between the big Broadway gigs. So it's called Bathtubs Over Broadway. I think any of our fans who like musicals, and I think there are a lot of us, would really dig this movie. Keep an eye out for this one. Like I said, it may not be open in your in all areas yet. Look in your independently run movie theaters for it to show up. It's called Bathtubs Over Broadway.
Jim, what's funny is when you were saying industrial musicals, I'm picturing music by Skinny Puppy or Nine Inch Nails or something like that.
Kraftwerk.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds awesome. Definitely we'll have to catch up with that. For me this week, I want to tell you about a cool experience that I had that is movie related. We had a campfire the other night in our backyard, had some friends over. It was awesome. It put me in the mood for campfire chat. So I think I've mentioned before, I'm kind of a VR enthusiast. So I found this cool, it's not a game, it's more of an app, but it's available on the big VR platforms called Alt Space VR. And I went in there. It's basically virtual environments. Everybody has a virtual avatar. Think Ready Player One, but way less graphically cool. But anyway, one of the big rooms where you can this thing is really just meant to hang out with people and talk to random people you don't know. One of the spaces that's available is a big bonfire. And so I went into the bonfire space. There's places for your character to sit, and the closer somebody is to you when they're talking, the louder they are. And so even though you're looking at sort of cartoony graphics, I felt like I was really around a campfire talking to people. And the topic of the conversation was our favorite films of 2018. And Jim, this is when you were on your business trip. I got involved in an hour and 45-minute discussion in a virtual reality space around a virtual campfire about the best movies ever, just talking to random people. And like, I read a lot on Reddit, I read reviews, I read comments, whatever, but this was like my favorite way to connect over movies. So Jim, we're going to have to try this, but there is a movie room. It is a movie theater. There's not like a real movie playing, but it's specifically like a place you can go and talk about movies. So you're going to have to try it, babe. But I tell you, like, I don't know, VR is becoming my favorite way to connect with people around movies and stuff. Like it's really neat. It was a cool experience.
Is there a way to virtually throw popcorn at people who are talking?
I was able to throw a basketball, but I didn't have popcorn.
Okay, because that would be cool.
So we got my son a Oculus Rift for Christmas.
Nice.
And so he was trying to get me to learn how to play Beat Saber, and I wanted to do it so bad, but man, I suck.
I do too, but it sure is fun. It's a blast.
And be careful, right, Brad? Tell him.
Huh?
Did you knock something over?
No. Didn't you strain your shoulder?
Oh, I did strain my shoulder. Yeah. I was getting really into it. I was playing Toto by Africa, and I was like really into it. And then I reached for this like high one, and I totally
the reins.
Yeah, I felt the rains down in Africa, all right. But anyway, so if you're into VR, if you have an Oculus Rift, Oculus Go, HTC Vive, you know, it's on all the big platforms. It's called Alt Space VR, and it's just a fun way to engage and talk movies and stuff. So, Mike, if you want to borrow your son's Rift, you could totally check it out. It's pretty awesome. So,
is it on PlayStation VR?
I don't know if it's on PlayStation VR yet.
Not that I have one, but I'm thinking about getting one.
Let's see. Let's find out. I can tell you. It looks like
this is fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. No, Sony's still trying to get it, but it's not on the platform yet, according to what I'm looking at. So, everybody but PSVR apparently. Anyway, I feel like I've stolen the whole conversation. So I'm gonna give it back for a minute. Guys, where can people find you if they want to chat about movies with you in the online world, not VR? Jim, where can people connect?
Oh, find me on Twitter at JJP Out West. That's all one word, JJP Out West. Or find me on Facebook under my Facebook account, under my real name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right, awesome. And Mike, you told us earlier where folks can find the show, but if they want to talk to you directly, is there some kind of online medium they can reach out to you?
Yeah, best is Twitter, just at Mike Lovins. All right.
Excellent. And you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro or on Facebook. My profile, guys, I was getting hit up by these crazy bots who are getting smarter, by the way. They're starting to use pictures of bear-looking dudes instead of like busty blonde women. So it's getting harder and harder to weed them out. My profile is set so that only friends of friends can request me. But even if you're not a friend of a friend, you can still message me. So if you want to talk movies, feel free. Just shoot me a message on Messenger, and we can connect that way. As long as you're, safe and sane and not crazy or inordinately negatively weird.
Those kinds of people wouldn't be listening to the show anyway, right?
We had one last week who was pretty nuts. He was pretty crazy. I mean,
yeah, we did.
It was bad.
We hadn't had a gate crasher in a while, but that was fun.
Oh goodness. Well, hey, just a big thank you to everyone who hung out with us in the live chat tonight. Tom, Jordan. Hey, Jordan. Saw you snuck in there. JP Wendell, Sam, Peter Lovins. Yeah. Love that guy for some strange reason. It was so great having all of you with us on the show this week, and big thank you as well to folks who tune in week after week on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, etc. Couldn't do the show without you. I mean, I guess we actually could, but what fun would that be? I guess. Exactly. Anyway, Have a great week, everyone. We will see you all next time. One final note, just a great, big, giant thank you to Magic Mike Lovins for stepping in this week, being our fun third. It was a blast, Mike. Thanks so much for coming here.
I'll be your third anytime.
Always nice with a third.
Gonna hold you to that, Mike. All right. Goodbye, everyone. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.